Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. I'm your host, Marguerite Crespillo, and I started this podcast simply dedicated to calling people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now, let's dive into the world of real estate. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Estate Real World, where, of course, we get to talk to all the cool people. And today, I'm very excited to welcome my friend, Renee Funk, who I've known, I think, 7 years now, 6 years. It's been a while. It's been a while since we connected. So let me read her bio real quickly. So Renee Funk is a leader in the real estate world, dedicated to helping realtors grow successful businesses while improving their work-life balance. She's passionate about making the real estate experience better for both agents and their clients. With a focus on teamwork, connection, and smarter ways of working, Renee guides agents to achieve their goals without burning out, thankfully. Whether you're an experienced agent or just starting out, she offers practical advice and strategies to help you thrive. Renee believes that the right support, anyone can build a fulfilling and successful real estate career. So welcome, my friend.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Marguerite. And you said we've known each other for 7 years now. That means we're getting older, not to be confused with old, right?
100%. 100%.
Older is graceful.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me how time flies because, so for our listeners, we're both at the same real estate company. We're both at eXp Realty. And this month, I think it was 8 years since I got here. And I can't believe that time has flown like it has.
Time flies when we're having fun, right? I'm about
It
7.5 years now. So you're just a little beat ahead of me. But being in business with you from my first start has been a lot of fun and quite a journey. So I'm excited to continue to do so and share our conversation today.
Exactly. We got to actually see each other live and in person last week at eXpCon, which was great.
Yes.
And there's a couple of things, there's a few things I wanted to talk about today. One of them is we were at eXpCon and we were there for the WIN class, the workshop, which WIN is Women's Impact Network, which you have been leading. And that just came about this year, right? Because I went to the event in August. So tell me a little bit about how that came about and what your thoughts are on that.
First of all, WIN, Women's Impact Network, is super excited to have you as a community member and so excited that you were at the inaugural WIN Summit, which was held August 2024. August 2024. There were a few things going on in the real estate industry, and WIN Summit as an inaugural get-together was our first get-together. WIN is a resource group, Women's Impact Network, within the family of One EXP, right? So One EXP is the DEI group within eXp Realty and eXp World Holdings that's comprised of 14 different and awesome resource groups. Women's Impact Network is the newest kid on the block, if you will. We recently named a board of directors. So there are a board of directors that are charged with the drive to say, you know what, we're going to cascade this impact out. And one of the differentiators that WIN is focused on is different. That WIN is not just for real estate agents. WIN is a community of agents who happen to be in the real estate space that also includes agents, staff members, so those amazing operations support team members that are the true glue behind agents and what we get to do every day, as well as leadership within the company. So it's not just agent focused. It's a group who are all in the industry who happen to be focused on women's initiatives. And we're super excited that you were there in Austin and then at eXpCon in Miami last week when you and I had the opportunity to share time. WIN had our first eXp lounge takeover with One EXP, and we were the biggest lounge takeover, of course. Yes.
It was cool. Yes.
It was super fun. Stay tuned for more. Actually, Women's Impact Network just launched our first Instagram account, and we're really looking to find leaders who feel led to lean in on women's initiatives. What you probably won't find within WIN is a bunch of talk about real estate. We're not getting together at this point talking about CRMs and lead generation and calling expireds and cold calling. Rather, we're just coincidentally in the real estate space talking about important topics and initiatives that women feel drawn to discover together and help elevate each other.
You know what was exciting is, and sadly I can't remember her name right now, I guess it's the age thing, but we, at the event in Austin, we did so for those who are listening, we did these round tables where we did these like little mini breakout sessions, so to speak, at these round tables. And I was sitting next to this young gal with young mom. She's got 3 babies. And we were talking about life and life, raising kids and dealing with all the guilt of being away from the kids and dealing with all that kind of stuff. And it was a fantastic roundtable. And then I ran into her at EXPCon.
Oh.
And I was so grateful to sit with you at the table, to have that wisdom from somebody older. And my kids are all grown. But I remember well those days when I first got into real estate. I had a 5-year-old and then I had 2 babies right away. So I had 3 kids under the age of 6 years old. So I remember that. And I really feel like that's where the Women's Impact Network can have an impact, is that you're right. We need more than real estate stuff. That's what we do, but that's not who we are. It's what we do and what we do for a living and how we take care of our families or contribute to our families or whatever your personal situation is. But we're so much more than that. And I feel like we go to a lot of these events and they are so focused on how to get more leads, how to get more leads. And you're like, maybe I need to figure out some balance and some scheduling. And because one thing that has come up, and I know you're fully aware, this is the craziness is that 65% of the agents in the US are women, right?
Yep.
But like 95% of the leadership is men. And
still men.
Well, because of our men, we need some examples, right? We need some leadership. So is that something?
And we do, and there is room for continued growth there. And I suspect that some of that gap is that in many cases, women who make up the lion's share of the real estate agent industry within the US are also in many cases carrying so many responsibilities, wearing so many hats, many times the primary caregiver or the lead in the household that's still taking care of all the other things. So when you opened up and introduced me, one of the things that you mentioned was the work-life balance, right? And so if we think about WIN and the cascading impact we can make, a part of the conversation that's important is work-life balance doesn't really exist. Rather, we as women in the industry, how do we continue to think of it as an integration and give ourselves grace that we are wearing a lot of hats and we are very important and we should allow our voice to be heard, regardless of if we're wearing so many hats that we may not have the full time to commit. 2 in-persons that we've had so far with WIN, an important goal for WIN is to say, who are the leaders? By the way, we're all leaders who haven't had that opportunity yet to step on stage, to speak in panels, to allow their voice, if they feel led to share, to be echoed and to be heard. And it's been really special to see panelists who speak on stage for the first time, breakout leaders who in breakout sessions raise their hand and say, may I share, in a room of hundreds of other females. And seeing that spark, and so many agents who've come up to me since I've been a board member with WIN, the women have said, I never gave myself the allowance or the time to really step out there and put myself out there because I was intimidated or maybe thought I wasn't enough. And WIN is a place that you're always enough.
Yeah.
Whether you're an agent, whether you're a staff member, because PS, the staff members, quite frankly, I think are some of the most important, if not the most important, to allow us to do what we do, and having a safe space. So it's been a really unique and awesome opportunity, and it's ground level. WIN is just getting started.
I'm so glad that you've included the staff too, because I think that many times they're undervalued, and not necessarily at the company level. It's just they have a lot going on. And you were there at EXPCon when Will Guidara spoke, right?
Yes,
Who
yes.
was fantastic. I'm going to figure out how to get him on my podcast. I don't know how, but I'm going to figure it out. He was one of the best speakers I think I've ever heard. And what I loved is how he talked about, you guys can check out his book, Unreasonable Hospitality. We'll put the links in the show notes. But he talked about how it wasn't just up to the owner or the chef, right? The top people. They made sure that everybody felt that they had a responsibility to provide this unreasonable service, right? This like
Yes, yes.
great service. And I love that because I think there's so much value to having the staff people there and what they bring to the table. And there's another book, I haven't read it in years, called Six Hats Thinking.
Oh,
And it's a great book. I read it probably 20 years ago. In Six Hats Thinking, it's like the disc profiles somewhat,
okay.
where they
Yeah.
give every personality type a different color hat. Because if you get all those different color hats at a table, you're going to have such different perspectives. You're going to, from somebody who's a strong personality to somebody who's an administrative person to somebody who's a accountant, bookkeeper, to whatever. They all have such different, you have your super positive and then your super negative and all these different mixes. But there's value in each of those opinions, is my point. And
Yes.
sometimes the strong ones are so outspoken that they take over. And then you don't get the opinions of anyone else because, like you said, they're intimidated or they feel awkward or they feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's because
Or
they've
the
been in
imposter syndrome, right? Like that, the imposter syndrome is a buzz phrase we're hearing a lot of. And quite frankly, it's just individuals telling themselves in this moment or in this space, I'm not enough. Call it what it is. And almost always it's not true. It's a lie.
Yeah.
So whatever that internal voice is, it's lying to you. It's lying to us. And we've all been there. Like I've had it in the last week, right? So it's normal. Kick it in the butt.
And I think that it's, I think probably social media has contributed a lot to that because you see this persona online and you think, oh my gosh, I can never compete with that, or I'm not that, or I'm not her, or I don't, this. And it was even yesterday I was talking to somebody who had mentioned she's never in any of the family pictures. And I said, why do you do that? She goes, we're at these events. I never feel pretty enough or skinny enough or whatever it was that she said. And I said, you're going to look back and wish you're as fat as you are now. You're going to think. You're going to look back and say, man, I looked hot back then. Why didn't I take more pictures?
Yeah. So true. And you and I are very fortunate because we were part of a brokerage who you started, when you introduced me, you said your friend, and I feel that friendship with you. And you and I are both aware that we have the opportunity to sit at a table that's always thinking differently and is inclusive. And so what we talk about being at EXP Realty and even through the Women's Impact Network is we have responsibilities. We're all leaders. And a part of that responsibility is, I call it a push and a pull, right? So we should, unless we're in coast mode, which I don't know about you, I'm not ready for coast mode yet. I'm older, but not ready for coast mode. So we should always be pushing forward. We should be focused on how can we disrupt, how can we differentiate, how can we be the leader that keeps pushing ahead. That's not an uncommon philosophy, that you are growing a business and you should keep pushing. Where EXP Realty and the tables that you and I are really fortunate to sit at with the people that we get to go to work with, we take it a step further. And that is, when you're pushing forward, you also have a responsibility to look behind you. And when you look behind you and you really pay attention, there are people raising their hand, even if they're doing so somewhat timidly because they're concerned they're not enough. You turn back and you really look, they're raising their hand. And it's our responsibility to pull them up and identify that there's somebody who may feel that apprehension or at times lack of confidence. And recently, it was actually at EXPCon, one of the panels at the Women's Impact Network Mastermind was comprised, again, agents, staff, and a staff member who so many of us love. This is a staff member who she's just absolutely incredible. They were sharing a conversation as panelists on legacy. And the staff member said, I'm just not sure that I ever truly am taking the action that's leaving a legacy. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said, I get to work with all these agents and they're building such legacy. And she continued to share a bit of her story that the room was teary eyed and just feeling, oh my gosh, this is such, again, an incredible woman. That after she stepped off stage, the number of people who went to her and said, hey, you're a part of the legacy that I get to build. Like, I'm an agent in Orlando, a team leader who gets to help the consumer acquire real estate that they build memories in.
Right.
Every single part, to your point, Margarita, whether you're in IT at eXp Realty, whether you're the Funk Collections operations team members that we have here in Orlando, or whether you're a fellow team member who's in the field as an agent, vital role that you are building a legacy. It's pretty cool. You just need to remind each other every once in a while.
It's funny because what just came to my mind when you were saying that is I tell the story frequently of a bicycle, right? Like we can describe all day long what it's like to ride a bike, but at some point you have to get on. The reality is that every part of that bicycle is important. And
Yeah.
every part of that bicycle is needed in order to help you get from point A to point B or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Like from the tire to the handlebars to the whatever is on that bike.
Breaks.
Yeah, brakes important, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah, all those parts and pieces are important. And I think that sometimes we forget or we get busy and sidetracked and we forget the value of all of those people that help us get to wherever we're trying to go or whatever it is we're trying to create, because maybe they're not as forthcoming and being able to speak up or whatever that is that keeps them from it. But I saw some pretty impactful conversations. And so with that, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk. We had some big changes here happen to our industry in the last couple months. And one of the things we were talking about a little bit before we came on today was we have this whole generation of real estate agents who have only been in the market a few years. And on the other end of that, if you look, the last time we had the bottom of the market was 2010. So since 2010, even agents who've been 10, 12 years in the business haven't been through a challenging market, and neither have consumers, frankly.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different ballgame in learning this new way of doing things for our industry. And so I wanted to touch on that a little bit. And we both are huge fans of Leo, and he's the CEO of EXP and what he's done with some of the things. And now we're talking a lot about clear cooperation. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Absolutely. And yeah, shout out to Leo Pereja and all the leadership at eXp Realty. For those that are listening, whether you're a consumer who's considering ever buying or selling in the near future, or quite frankly, for any time in the future, or an agent, there were regulation changes that went into place in August of 2024 that by most are being accounted some of the biggest regulation change that the industry has seen perhaps in the entire life of the industry. And without going down the rabbit hole of all the implications and the changes that those regulations are now imposing on the industry, I think the snapshot to say is that with change can come opportunity. And there's a lot of naysayers out there about regulation change, clear cooperation, how buyers agents and listing agents should be best setting up the consumer for success. And the reality is, from the moment that we as a team here in Orlando learned about change, we dove in. We realized that change can equal opportunity. We've been at the real estate industry for many years. And even though we don't love change, usually means that a lot of people are going to dig their head in the sand out of fear. And when that happens, the people who don't dig their head in the sand gain growth in market share and they elevate the service they provide. So this whole change has been nothing but opportunity. And specifically, you and I were speaking about now commissions have been decoupled. And what does that mean? Buyers agents are having conversations with their buyers differently to make sure that the buyers understand what fees are involved to attain their services. And listing agents are having conversations with the sellers to explain their value proposition and uncover what the fees are for their services. As we know, commissions are all negotiable. But where's some of the muddiness coming into when buyer's agents are doing what, Marguerite?
They're calling the listing agent and asking, like, what is the seller paying? And to dig just a small bit deeper, is it how it has historically been is commissions were paid broker to broker. So the listing agent would negotiate their commission, and then they would be willing to share that commission with an agent who represented the buyer. Now it's separate. The listing agent gets paid what they get paid, the buyer's agent gets paid what they paid, and then anything can be negotiated as part of the purchase contract, right?
Yep. And this is a benefit to the consumer. There's some not so fun parts of the regulation change. By and large, the smart agents are understanding these changes and improving the service they're providing to buyers and sellers. And also the buyers and sellers have an opportunity for that elevated service. And that's what we're seeing with the Funk Collection here in Orlando is the team really didn't miss a beat, right? We were prepared. Thank you to all the education that eXp Realty put at the forefront and that we were in tune with just leaning into change. We have seen better service, better feedback from our buyers and sellers because we know exactly how to navigate these changes. Now, Marguerite, we were talking about how some of the buyer's agents in other brokerages are calling listing agents with the Funk Collection. And I'm seeing this, I'm hearing this from all teams and all real estate agents from around the country, right? Is what does a listing agent do when the buyer's agent calls up and says, before I'll show your listing, your seller and you must disclose if or what the amount is that the seller might be willing to offer in way of a concession that then the buyer can choose to cover the buyer's agent's fee. Now
Right.
that's sticky, right?
It's
And
called
that's
steering.
actually steering. Steering. And our own CEO, Leo, recently did an op-ed about this very topic. What do we think this is rooted in? Do we think this is rooted in just a lack of knowledge and education that buyer's agents should never need to call before a showing and ask that question?
I think it's a culmination of things. I definitely think it's an education issue, right? And frankly, historically, buyer's agents never had to be in that negotiating position to justify their fee. They could see what a seller was going to pay, and they never even had to have that conversation. So
Yeah.
now, and I have said for years, for 30 years, I've done buyer presentations, upfront buyer presentations, and explained how the process works and how I get paid and all that. And I've done it for years. So for me, it was no different other than historically, I would be able to say this is normally paid by the seller, but now we have a different conversation. So it's education and it's, I hate to use this word, but in my opinion, it's a little bit of laziness. It's like, why are you not sitting down? And I remember asking years ago before this ever happened, I'm like, why are you not doing buyer presentations? And agents would always say, because that's not how I was taught. And that's true. The industry as a whole taught us listing appointments, and they said, don't take a listing without a listing agreement in place. But they never said that about the buyer side.
Yes.
So these agents never, throughout my career, were required to submit or present to a buyer their value and their worth. So I would say it's education. Some of it, I'm not going to lie, I feel like a little bit of it is laziness. It's okay. We're here now. So what you need to figure this out.
Yeah, and I had done a reel on my Instagram in the last week or so that was talking about if you're a real estate agent in the industry in 2024 and 2025, suck it up. What was is no longer.
Right. Right.
Straight up. And that's not a bad thing. Once again, change doesn't have to be bad. It might not be fun, but if you really tap into, you can see the opportunity. Agents have an opportunity to improve the service they provide. Agents also have an opportunity because of that improvement in service to earn a stronger income, period. But not all agents are because they don't understand. So one of the obstacles that we're seeing is buyer's agent may call up the Funk Collection, who's a listing agent, and say, hey, 123 Banana Street, I have a buyer who might be interested. Before I show it, can you go ahead and tell me what your seller is offering as a concession? Okay. As a listing agent, our answer is simply this. We've had the conversations with our sellers. Our sellers know the differences between the trade-offs is if you disclose it up front, what that might mean. And if you just say rather, as a seller, I'm open-minded to consider all offers. Go ahead and write up the strongest offer. And if you're requesting for a concession from the seller, just write it up in the offer.
Yeah.
right? What we're seeing in Orlando when the listing agents on the team are giving that information over to the buyer's agent says, doubles down. Yeah, but again, before I show it, I need you to tell me. Now, here's where the buyer's agents are missing the mark. They're forgetting that one of the number one reasons that the consumer hires us as the professional agent is because we are strong negotiators. The buyer's
Yep.
agent should be talking to the buyer about the ways the buyer's agent will negotiate to keep as much money in the buyer's pocket while the buyer's agent finds the ideal home. And that's the conversation, to your point, Marguerite, that there's some lack of education, that they're not getting that piece of this equation.
And what's interesting that just happened to me is I have been doing this a long time. I know my value, I know my worth, and I negotiated what I felt was fair with my buyer, right? I had a buyer I'm representing. And so I presented that amount to in the contract to the agent. And the agent was like, why are you asking for that amount? That's not standard. That's not the normal in our area. And I said, we don't have a standard. There's nothing negotiable. It's whatever I wrote in the contract. It's no different than, again, if you have a buyer who needs money towards closing costs for their loan program or whatever that might be. But I don't know what the disconnect is. And she was adamant. And my offer actually got rejected because she said the seller said I was being greedy in what I asked for in my amount. And I was like, first of all, how did that conversation come about? But number two, that's what negotiating is for, right? That's what our offers are for. That's what, like when everyone says, send me a reasonable offer. What does reasonable mean?
Yeah.
There's no, to me, there's no such thing. Is if you have your house listed at 500 and I write an offer at 480, is that reasonable? No, that was disrespectful. That was a low ball offer. Wait a minute. What's
Yeah.
reasonable?
And then there's so much subjective, right? And so going back to that listing agent example, so we're on the listing agent side, we're explaining to the buyer's agent that our sellers are open-minded to review all written offers. Go ahead and show the home, because remember, those listening in, these requests are coming from buyer's agents before their buyer has even seen the home.
Yes.
Bonkers. So we'll share that with the buyer's agent. I'd say 50% of the time, it's enough that the buyer's agents are starting to understand. The other 50% of the time, what the buyer's agent comes back and says is, yeah, but we don't want to show it because I need to make sure my fee is covered. Okay. What we as listing agents go back to that buyer's agent and say, and this isn't a phone call, and it's giving grace and very calm. We're not mad. We're just helping them along in their awareness.
Good journey.
Is it sounds like your buyer is requesting to pre-negotiate their offer before they even view 123 Banana Street. Is that right?
Great language.
Buyer's agent pauses. We might get varying answers. They usually double down again and we'll say, okay, how about this? So it sounds like the buyer's asking to pre-negotiate concessions. Is the buyer also asking to pre-negotiate the number of days that the buyer's requesting for inspection period? What other terms are your buyers asking to pre-negotiate before they even step foot into the property? And what we find when we help them nudge along, just sometimes it's a little cheeky, but always with grace and respect, is they're starting to get it. Oh, write it up. It's a negotiated term on a contract. Oh, okay. It's all negotiable. And that's a win for the consumer. It's a win for all involved, quite frankly.
100%. And as I'm listening to you, I know that you also are a trainer. I'm not sure if that's the right word for exactly what to say, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, and
Which is
exactly
one of
what
my
to say.
favorite books. I got it on audio, everything. I've listened to it about a load of times.
Mm.
Oh, look at that. Exactly what to say. How did you get involved in that? Because like I said, when I hear you speaking today on these, it's very clear in a lot of ways, much more so than maybe most, where
Mm.
it's not scripted, but it sounds scripted in a way. No, it doesn't sound scripted. I'm not sure how to say that. What I'm saying is exactly what to say.
Thank you for that. And don't be surprised, but I don't always know exactly what to say. However, we have a little saying within the exactly what to say community, which is it's really being clear on the questions that we should ask, right? Is the person who controls the conversation is asking the questions. And I first became an Exactly What to Say certified guide with Phil M. Jones about 2 years ago. For those who haven't had a chance yet to read the book, it's Exactly What to Say by Phil M. Jones. And it is, my assessment of the book is one of the strongest communication fundamental philosophies that I've ever seen. So when I first was drawn to the book through my husband, Jeffrey Funk, he said, "You have to read this book." And I said, "Yeah, I got a lot going on. I got a lot going on." And Jeff said, "No, you have to read this book." It took Jeff about 2 months. And then fast forward to, I was going to a real estate conference where Phil M. Jones was the keynote. And I said, darn it, I better listen to that
Oh, wow.
book. So I turned it on Audible, put it on the car. The good news is the book is a very fast 72-minute listen, small but mighty in impact. And once I listened to the book, I was a moth to the flame and haven't left since. Being very intentional and slowing down the process to speed up the outcome has been and continues to be a game changer for the agents that are leaning in through Exactly What to Say. So I get to coach and train agents through communications training and Exactly What to Say, which is pretty cool.
What I love about what you just said, because I was thinking about all this before we tapped into this part of the conversation, is the importance of slowing down. And
Mm,
because people tell you so much in the words that they choose, their body language, how they respond and how they react. If you're paying attention, they give you tons of flags. They give you tons of insight and ideas as to what is going on with them if you're paying attention. But if
yeah.
you're multitasking and you're doing 50 other things and you're not listening, and I only hear 1 out of 10 words that you said, then I'm not going to handle the situation correctly.
Yeah. And that's rooted in, it's human nature for us to be in communication in a conversation. And while the other individual is speaking with us, many humans are already thinking about the next thing they're going to say. And oftentimes it's the next thing they're going to tell. So one of the beautiful parts of Exactly What to Say that I've really leaned into is when you first seek out through curiosity, it's not an easy skill set, and it's one that's in progress for me, is when you're a leader of a team or a leader, even as a parent, we're conditioned to just give answers. Someone asks a question, you give an answer, right? Think about mentorship. Those that you're mentoring, they come to you and they want the answer. And for my whole career, and even as a mom, like I would just spurt out the answer. Exactly What to Say is a framework that's helping agents slow down to rather say in those moments, just imagine if we rather paused and thought of 2 additional clarifying questions we could ask that position us with the gift of context, that it doesn't matter who the relationship is with, whether it's a new buyer that you just met today on an online lead, a visitor of an open house, or whether you're a parent and you have kiddos. You will be for the better because you pause to ask 2 additional questions before you jump to the answer that maybe you're wrong, right? So it's been a really interesting journey, and I appreciate you giving a moment to talk about it, because I could go on. And our dear friend Elizabeth Riley, she'll remind everybody that knows me that I might drive you crazy with questions, but that's okay.
Well, what comes to mind for me is, as we're wrapping up today, is that 25 years ago, I was in, I don't know if you know who Joe Stump is with By Referral
Mhm.
Only. I was part of his program for 12 years. And I remember him saying back then is to ask the question, why is that important to you? But
Mm,
you have to ask it to get to why it's really important. Many times you have to ask that same question 4, 5, 6, 7 times to really dig
yes.
in. But if you take the time to dig in and figure out what's really important to them, then guess what? You get to be the one that helps them solve that problem, helps them resolve that situation, helps them get through whatever it is they need to get through. But it's like when you ask somebody, how are you today? And they go, fine. You
Oh,
can
the
either,
autoresponder. It's useless. It's useless. Now, it doesn't mean the question, how are you, is never impactful. Though I believe many of your listeners are in the real estate space, and that means that many of your listeners are in sales. The how are you question in sales is nearly 100% useless, especially when you haven't really found a relationship that's in a deeper fashion. how are you is useless. You're never going to get a legitimate answer. Quite frankly, the person you're asking knows that you don't really care. You're not asking. It's because the individual doesn't have something else to say. They feel like they're going to lead in. You may have to have me back, Marguerite, where we can talk about the solution to get rid of how are you. You replace those with what's known as OFQs. And maybe this is a good hook, and I could just volunteer myself to come back and talk about OFQs.
That was the new word we learned at EXPCon, right? Voluntold.
Voluntold, that's right.
Love to have you back for a part 2. We'll definitely do this part 2 because there was a whole lot more we could have definitely talked about. I did want to mention, and we forgot to mention it when we were talking about the commissions and clear cooperation and all that, is that EXP has formed a buyer toolkit and a seller toolkit that any of you guys have free reign to. If you just message Renee or message myself, we'll post a link in the comments. It's a free to, and it's fantastic. I actually sat down and went through it, and there's some really great information. So and what I love about our leadership and Leo and EXP is they open sourced it, open anybody.
Oh yeah, there's no hook here. There's no registration. You're not going to be asked to submit a single ounce of your information. It's literally buyer toolkit, seller toolkit for agents that has open sourced everything from presentations to scripting to forms. All the EXP forms are open source, so you can rip off, duplicate, utilize. There is a notable independent brokerage that I'm aware of that reached out to me recently, not yet with EXP Realty, and that independent brokerage owner of a couple hundred agents said, yeah, I'm using EXP forms. And I said, well, here's the thing about the buyer and seller toolkit is, if you think those resources that are open sourced for anyone to use are good, just wait until you choose to align with EXP Realty.
See, there's your great line right there. So that is our tie-in to part 2. So we're going to definitely get that scheduled because you're absolutely right. Like, we need another conversation. And so it's always a pleasure to spend any time with you. You just volunteered yourself to be on the show again, and I'm excited about that. Just so you guys know, we learned that word at EXPCon because we were sitting there and we were in this lounge, and next thing Elizabeth was there and she says, "Hey, I need your guys' help." We're like, "Okay, what do you need?" She goes, "I'm voluntolding you." We're like, "Okay."
Well, we didn't know for what. She just said, could you go sit over here? We were like, okay, yeah.
The next thing, we're sitting at a table with the leadership of South Africa, Steve. I don't know his last name, unfortunately, but he was sitting there and he was talking to a group of agents and needed some insight. And it was like the best conversation. And we were happy to be voluntold. We're like, we'll go.
That is called core value collaboration in motion. Is 100%. Shareholders of a company that are building an equity position that helps them build their business for their families, treat their businesses differently. And that's how you can be in a room when a fellow shareholder says, "Marguerite and Renee, would you share a conversation? Would you hop over here with people we've never met before?" And you and I go, absolutely, because we are shareholders in a company that is amazing. So proud to be in it with you, and I look forward to continued conversations.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Renee. This is a long time coming, and I'm glad we finally made it happen. And thank you. For any of you out there, you are welcome to get a hold of Renee. We'll make sure to put her contact information in our show notes. And thank you again for joining us on Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the cool people. Be sure to follow me on social media and go over to my website at margueritecrespillo.com and add your name in there. And we look forward to talking to more cool people and part 2 with Renee. So thank you again for joining us, everybody. Make it an amazing day.
Make it a great day.
All right. Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in the real estate industry and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes, and while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others to find our podcast for show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry. Also, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email to get early advance notice of upcoming podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and go out there and be a part of the elite masterclass and raising the bar on the real estate industry.